Build your own MOKE, making the wheels. Each wheel requires 6 discs, and then you're going to pop out these parts here and put them to one side. You should end up with 4 circles, 2 rings and a small circle. Now we're going to take each circle and glue it to the next. Now apply some glue in a circle, but be sure to not put it in the middle. Take your next disc, put it on top, twist and squeeze together. Use your fingers around the outside to make sure it stays central. Now let's glue these 2 rings onto the wheel. Be sure to glue the ring itself rather than the wheel to ensure that you get the glue only on the ring and not where you don't want it. Final one in there. We're going to keep the cap separate for later, but that's going to cover up once we put the axle through. So for now, pop that in there and put it to one side. You've done it for one wheel, now let's do it for the rest. Build your own MOKE, final fitment. It's now time to finish the internal fitment of the MOKE. Let's get these chairs attached, and then it's the steering wheel, the gear stick, and finally we'll do bumpers and wheels. Fitting your seats, you want to position them midway across that cross member. As soon as it's attached, go ahead and fit the other seat and the bench seat if you want to. Just before we do the steering wheel and the gear stick, we need to chop these axles to length, which is going to give us the bits left over in which to do the steering column and the gear stick. You may or may not have noticed that when you took your parts out of the kit earlier, on the part that had these 2 axles here, there are some tiny marks just here, and this shows you where you should cut your axle. So if you push your axle all the way to the left hand side and then make a mark with a knife or a pencil perfectly in line with that mark, holding firmly and holding that nice and straight, you're just going to roll this back and forwards. Do this one more time so that you've got 2 axles the same length. You don't need to go back to your packaging again, you can just use this as a template. Line it up at this end, mark here, and then repeat the same process as before. Building the steering column. Pop out all the parts, remembering to save the little circle that's at the bottom here. Take the steering wheel, pop the little centre piece out. You're going to put some glue on the end of here. I'm going to insert it into the steering wheel hole. Nice and flush. Just want to make sure that your steering wheel is nice and square as well. Finally, little blob of glue on here, and then pop the little centre cap on. It should look something like this when it's done, and now it's ready to insert into the car. You'll notice there are 2 crosshairs, so you can choose if yours is left or right hand drive. Take something pointy, like this pencil here, and we're going to use it to poke into that crosshairs to create a hole in which to insert your steering column. Perfect. Pull that back out a second, put a blob of glue in, and then let's insert our steering column. Just going to rotate the steering wheel so that's nicely in line. We're going to do the same thing with this crosshairs here for the gear stick. Only this time we're going to insert our pen at a slight angle. Nice blob of glue and insert our gear stick. There we are, happy with that. Once again, using our pointy pencil, we're going to just poke into the crosshairs to make sure that we've got a nice hole for our axle to go through. We're going to do that for all 4 of the crosshairs. We can now insert our axle through all of the holes and make sure it's aligned with the centre of the car. Make sure that's lined up centrally, and now it's time to fix the wheels on. Now, put a blob of glue in the hole on your wheel and then slide it onto the axle, twisting as you go. Repeat on the other side. At the other end, we're going to poke our pencil through the crosshairs again. Having inserted the axle, now glue the front wheels in place. Finally, flip your car on its side and glue the hubcaps on to cover up the point where the axle meets the wheel. When you've attached all the hubcaps nice and centrally, they should look like this. Attaching the rear bumper. First thing we're going to do is cut our stick to the right length. So we're going to line it up with the width of the body and make a mark just here. Once it's cut to length, glue it in place to the rear bumper brackets. Attaching the front bumper. We've got the front two bumper brackets here. They're quite delicate, but basically all we need to do is squash them in the centre across the middle with a ruler and then glue the two sides together. So that's squashed in the middle, and now if we push it with our knife, you can see how that comes together. We're just going to glue that together and then glue it onto the main body. Let's apply some glue to each of these brackets and apply our bumper stick. And then attach our bumper. Let's just make sure that's nice and parallel. The last thing to do is add our headlights and our indicators on both the front and the back. At the front end, find your headlamp rings, and the indicators are the dot on the inside of that. Separate all that up and we're going to attach it to the front end. For this, you're going to want to get yourself a glue stick. It's going to be much more delicate than using the glue gun. Pop them in place. So we're going to start on this side. We've got two big ones and a little one. Just going to glue this and then place it in position. Doesn't need a lot. Repeat the same thing with all of them and it's going to look ace. Nice. You've got to be chuffed with that. That looks amazing.